What's up, everybody? So we are back with another season of The Jungle. And, I initially, when I started this project, I was looking for great guys in the community who have struggled with some adversity and overcome obstacles in their life. And I had always seen Kenny in the distance. I knew about Kenny. I never knew him, but we would be at events in Akron. My wife grew up in Akron, and she's the one that kind of got me hip to Kenny. And I remember reaching out to Kenny, and immediately within 24 hours, he messaged me back, and he's like, "Yes, I'll absolutely do this show with you." It's taken me a while to get him on, but hey, he's a busy guy. So without further ado, guys, this is Kenny Lambert, just a dad from Akron.
How you guys doing? Welcome down here to the store. It's a pleasure and honor to be on this podcast with Chris. And I'm excited to, do this podcast.
Guys, Kenny is doing a ton of stuff throughout the community, and he has been for years. He started this clothing store, and then he kind of did it with alongside his daughter, Amelia. He is what a dad should be. He is what a father should be. He's done all this for his daughter. He's starting a project across the street called Jadfa House. Basically, it's going to be a place for meetings and sober meetings, things like that. I'm going to let him explain a lot of that. We're going to get into that. He just completed. You just launched the movement, did you not? Or the movement's been out for a minute?
Yeah, so the movement was like a documentary we filmed for 2 years. That came out October 1st, 2022.
2022.
So, yeah, okay. 22, yeah.
Okay.
So it's been out for just over a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So needless to say, he's been in the headlines recently. He's won a bunch of fashion awards throughout Akron. He's just doing great things. But I want to kind of back things up a little bit, and I want everybody to know who Kenny Lambert is. So why don't you go ahead and just let everybody know, kind of what your backstory is, what kind of trouble you got into, and that's obviously not the focus.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell everybody who you are?
Yeah, for sure. So first and foremost, Kenny Lambert, just a dad from Akron. And so who Kenny Lambert used to be, right? So I grew up here in the Akron Kenmore neighborhood, right here, Kenmore Boulevard. So early age, got into skateboarding, playing sports. Shortly after that, became, running the streets, drugs and alcohol, the lifestyle of that. Just always hanging out with older people. And growing up, I was the only one of my friends who grew up with a present father here in the neighborhood. And growing up as a kid, I despised that, because I'm like, all my friends would get in trouble, and they'd just get
street cred.
Yeah. It's like they get slapped on the wrist from their mom, and then sent back out, and then I would have consequences, you know. So growing up, I took that for granted. But what I have realized as I grew up and got sober, I gained a lot of ethics, work ethic from my dad. Morals, how to be a good person. Yeah. And a lot of my friends growing up, watching them grow up as well, they're less fortunate and didn't have the work ethic,
It's super funny you say that, because I kind of feel like we're in the same boat there.
Yeah.
I had a dad. A lot of my friends didn't. And my dad, he was an amazing role model.
Right.
Wasn't the best dad,
yeah.
but that's okay. Nobody's perfect,
Sure.
But it's the same thing. He instilled work ethic. He instilled morals. He instilled what a man was supposed to be in a household.
Right.
And I think that carries alongside of the fact that you have built this alongside your daughter. And we've had the conversation, and we'll get into it, but your motivation for doing all this,
right,
that kind of piggybacks on the fact that your dad instilled those morals and those ethics.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So go ahead, keep going.
Yeah. So growing up in the neighborhood, it was very easily accessible to the lifestyle of drugs and alcohol. Growing up, I was very naive. But once I crossed that imaginary line and started experimenting, it was everywhere. I realized I'm wow, I grew up next to this meth house. And I didn't even know it was a meth house because I was so naive, But once I started doing drugs and encountering those, scenarios, I'm wow, this has been here the whole time. And I just grew up, oblivious to it. I started drinking about 15, 16 years old, and quickly sucked up in that lifestyle. I loved it. It was an escape. I fit in, and I just thrived off it. Encounters with the police, all that different stuff was it was the lifestyle, just trying to escape, and I beat the system type thing, right? And until I didn't beat the system, and I was in and out of jail. And the addiction, you know, escalated from just drinking and smoking weed to opiates, Xanax, heroin, every drug. You know, I've experimented with every drug.
Yeah.
I'm the type of drug addict that has to
Try them all.
yeah, and I try them all, and then I have to try it twice. You know,
Yeah.
so it's like if I have a horrible
First time
experience,
didn't go well, we're gonna
yeah,
take it
so
out
it's like
just to be sure.
yeah, just to be sure, yeah. So, you know, and that's the thing is and then all those morals and stuff that was instilled as a kid growing up, those didn't really matter, you know, because I felt like I was already a disappointment. I
Yep.
felt like I already failed. So like that, putting that into my body helped me, you know, forget and just to and numb the pain
Yeah.
and the feelings of like, you know, I'm a failure. Do drugs. Oh, I feel great, you know, until the next day. And then
Well, and like you just said, I always refer back to, I always had a line.
yeah,
My line was, and I think this holds true for a lot of addicts and a lot of people in general. Once you cross that line,
yeah,
you'll do just about anything.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
mine was always putting a needle in my arm. I was
Yeah.
always like, I will never do that. That's
Yeah.
gross. Junkies do that.
Yeah.
And before I knew it, I had a needle in my arm.
Same,
and
yeah.
Shortly after that, I was booting doors in.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
So it's very relatable in that
Yeah.
aspect. But like you said, you have these morals, and then you're stomping on them. You're trudging through them. So you moved to California as well, right?
Yeah, I lived out there for a little
And
bit.
so
Yeah.
this isn't your first clothing gig.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's like
So talk just a little bit about the other clothing gig that you had going as well.
yeah, so the other clothing gig was called Dirty Girls.
Okay.
And what that was I pretty much just created and designed vulgar clothing.
Okay.
And I was in the lifestyle of partying. I was in the middle of like
Yeah.
my addiction, you know. So I was like, and it had started like the complete opposite of what this is, a movement of chaos.
Yeah.
You know, turning people out on drugs, renting out clubs in Akron, and having different artists come headline and local artists open up, and we would destroy the club. It was
Yeah.
600-700 people would show up. It'd be insane, but that's like it was this crazy. It was like this crazy, like I guess like a movement, you know, like
Yeah.
the complete opposite of what this is. And it was just destroying lives in the city, you know, like and just not good. But we loved it, you know, like we were just thriving off that.
Well, and I only bring that up because, like you said, it's at the other end of the spectrum of what you're doing now.
Yeah,
you know
for
what I
sure,
mean.
yeah.
I think that's relevant because you have again. I mean, you've shown you've been at the one end of the spectrum, and you've totally
Right.
done a
Yeah.
180, and now you're up here making positive changes.
Yeah,
in
for
the
sure.
community. So, okay. So, what after California, you came back? What was kind of
Yeah, so like California was like this pivotal moment where I thought like geographical like change and cure would fix me, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm like struggling here in Ohio, DUIs, got my first felony, and I'm like, you know, like addicted. I didn't really know what addiction was, you know. I just knew like I was like in this lifestyle, and
Yeah.
I never experienced withdrawal and stuff, you know. So I'm like, I'm gonna go to California, I'm gonna stay out there with my homies, and I'm just gonna get sober. Like I just wanted to like get off the pills, you know. I'm
Yeah.
still gonna drink this and that. Go out there, have the seizure on Venice Beach from the withdrawals, die for 4 minutes, get brought back to life. And then I realized, you know, when I'm in the hospital there, they come in and they're like, yeah, like, you know, asking me all these questions. And they gave me gave me these papers for treatment. And I'm thinking like, this is, I thought, you know, like my perspective of treatment or like help at that time was like, this is like an encounter with the system. You know, like if I go to get help to get sober, then I'm going to be this number. You know, like I'm going to be, I go fill out a job application and they're going to say, it's going to say like, oh, this person went to treatment, you know, that's what I thought. That was my perception of it, you know? So I stayed out there for a little bit longer. And when I flew back here, I thought my perception and perspective was like, if I do Xanax, I'll have a seizure because that's what caused it, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do everything else besides that. And then that's when addiction really kicked in. And I knew, you know, I experienced withdrawal and I experienced, all that, like, you know, like that's when it started really becoming like a problem, you know, like I'm not just selling stuff to, you know, live this lifestyle. I'm stealing.
Yeah.
You know, I become this person that I told myself as a kid, I will never be like that person.
Yep.
And I had this older homie I looked up to, but like, and he had like the coolest, like fast, like BMW cars, but he was like strung out on heroin. And I'm like, bro, you're so cool, but like, I could never be that. That's dirt. You're dirty. You know, like that's how I looked at it. And I became that person.
Yeah.
And there was nothing that I could do to stop it, you know, because I didn't know, like I wasn't willing, you know, I thought all my ways all my great ideas would get me
Yep.
out of that, you know, and it just made it worse or
No, it's
prolonged it. Yeah.
yeah, it's being in that situation. It's funny. I tell my wife constantly. I'm like, and she doesn't know the old me,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so to look back at old articles and like things that I did and me telling her stories, she's like, that doesn't even make sense. But
Yeah.
it's you cross that line and
Yeah. Yeah.
you're a snowball and you're
Yeah.
rolling
For
that it's an
sure.
avalanche. So let's talk about. So you move back, you're going through the benzo withdrawals.
Yeah.
And for anybody that doesn't know, if there's anybody listening to this and you are struggling with benzos, do not go cold turkey. Benzos are the one drug that will kill you if you
Yeah.
try and go cold turkey. Obviously, can you
Yeah.
flatline for 4 minutes? So just that little PSA, always seek help if you're trying to withdraw off benzos. But anyway, so you come back. So you're in, how many times were you in and out of rehab?
So like it wasn't really rehab for me. It was always jail.
Okay.
You know, because like so like I went to rehab twice. I went to a detox facility, rehab twice. But jail probably 20 something times.
Okay.
You know, because I got stuck in that cycle of like felony probation and then trying to beat the system or like outsmart them with like, you
Yeah.
know, using drugs and like trying to, you
Yeah.
know,
Or I can go,
manipulate
I
the
can
urine.
drink. I just dropped
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just dropped the urine. I can go drink for
Yep.
3 or 4 days
So,
before.
and I didn't understand like the mental obsession yet, you know, like the physical allergy of drugs and alcohol. You know, I didn't understand like I'm an alcoholic, I'm a drug addict. Like when I put one in me, like that's never enough, you
Yeah.
know? And I would continue that cycle, you know, like in and out of like halfway houses, 2015 halfway house for 6 months, made it through there without using. First night I get out, you know, like, and I'm going to meetings and stuff, but I'm using that as like a pass, so I get out of the facility. So I
Yeah.
go to a meeting, don't listen or make any connection to what's going on. I'm just like, yeah, this is freedom, you know. So I'm like just enjoying fresh air.
Yeah.
And then go back to the facility. And then when I get out, you know, I had this whole case plan of like, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to use drugs, I'm not going to hang out with these people. But I didn't put any of that into action those 6 months, you know. So it's like all these like hopes and dreams. And then I get out and first night, blackout, wasted.
Yep.
And I show up at my parents' house at like 3 a.m. And the whole time, you know, it's like on the phone and in the halfway house talking to them, they're so happy, you know, like they're like, wow, like you sound great. Like you have all these goals and dreams. And I'm like, yeah, you know, like I really want to do this. First night out, blackout, wasted, and they knew though. You know, I show up at their house like 2, 3 in the morning, and they're just sitting on the couch, and I'm like, what are you guys doing awake?
It's the intuition.
Yeah, and they're like,
There's
we
intuition.
knew, yeah, like we knew you were gonna do this, and I'm
Yeah.
like, what do you mean? And it was like that disappointment, all that disappointment, and like
Yep.
everything came back, and that just like fueled me. I'm like, well, I already screwed up, you know. So boom, back out drinking. 2 weeks later, I'm back in jail.
Yep.
So it was a lot from like 2012 to like 2017. It was that whole probation of in and out of jail. I'd start doing good, and then drop dirty or violate, and they'd be like, "Okay, you go to jail for 6 days. You go to jail for a week."
Then what was your in my go at my go around
Yeah,
or my experience there's my feelings are there is a moment where you decide that you're going to push to get sober and
Yeah.
clean your life up.
yeah,
But then there's also, and you could define that as the rock bottom.
yeah,
I feel like there's also another point where once you get a little further down the road, and then you have to deal with all those emotions that you've been numbing for so
Right.
long. You know, it's kind of like you make that choice that you finally had enough, so you clean your life up. But then mine was like I got arrested, and at that point I was like, and I was looking at 8 to 24 years.
yeah,
And so when I got arrested, I was like, okay, well, I'm obviously done. Like, I want to make sure that I get through this and I don't ever want to do this again. But then it was 4 months down the road when my kids came for visitation in prison, and it was the jaws of life around my neck, and I had to deal with all those raw emotions.
right.
So for you, what was the moment that you were finally like, or was there multiple moments where you were finally like, this is it? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not.
Oh yeah, I'm hard headed. So like that was like my rock bottom. I'll be like, oh, I've reached rock bottom. And I'd get sober, like go to treatment for, you know, however long, and I would easily forget.
Yeah.
You know, so then I'd come back out, and the one that sticks out to me the most is I went to IBH 2016. I was there for like 90 something days, and I was in jail 6 months prior to IBH. So it was like 6 months in jail, then IBH. And when I got there, you know, I was like, wow, like life's so great, this and that. And they're teaching me all these tools, how to stay sober and like how to live in
Yeah.
recovery. But my best thinking, because that was my first go around with recovery, was like, well, I'll take some of these tools. You guys can have these. Like,
Yeah.
like I thought I knew myself better than these people knew me, right? And that wasn't the case.
I can do it better.
Yep. And so like what I did was I took some of the tools, like I'll go to some meetings, I'll get a few like males in recovery and like talk to them, but I'm not gonna like share my feelings. I'm not gonna do this. I'm taking all these things to the grave, right? All the stuff that's keeping me sick, right? And I ended up relapsing. And what they always told you in treatment, what was I always heard was, if you go back out, you pick up right where you left off.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, there's no way. I was so bad. And I relapsed, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And that was the time when my daughter, was my daughter's mom was pregnant with my daughter.
Okay.
And I thought I would celebrate, right? Like, yeah, I'm about to have a kid. Let's celebrate. Stupid, And yeah, it's like the whole 9 months, she was pregnant. I was off running, ripping and running, and that's when it got worse, So it's like I thought I had reached rock bottom. Then it's like that trap door, and then it's like that 9 months in between there was like that's what led me to my real bottom. My daughter was born, and at the hospital, I'm in there, and everyone from the meetings in recovery is like, they knew, like some people knew I relapsed and was like doing bad, but they're still calling me like, congrats, man, like we want to come see your daughter, and I'm like, oh no, like you have to wait till we get home. And all the people I'm using drugs with, I'm like, yeah, come see my daughter, but like bring me drugs. Like you can only come see her if you bring me drugs. And that's how selfish I was, man, because like in the moment I didn't realize like you can't come see this beautiful little girl that God just blessed me with, right? Unless you're bringing me something. It's not even about her. It's about me, right? And like looking back, it still always gives me the chills. Like it's like looking back, like that's how selfish I was,
So
and
when did you come to that like realization of that?
Yeah. So like the realization was, like it was still like I knew like the first 9 months she was born, I had all these like moments of clarity, like like wow, like I'm like with my daughter, I'm like, and I'm still like I'm like leaving her in the room to go smoke dope in the other room, and I know this is not right, and I feel like I'm the worst dad in the world, right? And I like cry, and I just felt so bad. I'm like, I'm like, my daughter doesn't, like I didn't grow up with a dad like this, like my dad was present. My dad gave me the best life, the best he could, and I'm like, like who am I? Like this is not who I'm supposed to be. And I ended up, like praying. I ended up getting kicked out. I'm homeless, and I'm praying every night, like, God, if I have purpose, put me in jail. And I never prayed to go to jail. I always prayed to get out.
Right.
Like, God, get me out of jail. I promise I'll do everything right. God, put me in jail if I have a purpose, because that's how miserable I was. And I prayed that every night, and then I ended up getting arrested. And because the other option was suicide, it was like, put me in jail or I'm going to commit suicide. Because I knew that my daughter deserved a better dad, right?
Yeah.
And if I were to overdose and die on drugs or commit suicide, my daughter would grow up and be like, well, who was my dad?
Yep.
And the person I was at that time was not no one good, like they'd have been like, your dad was a junkie, your dad was this, your dad just stole and robbed and everything and that. Then it's like, who's going to raise my daughter?
There were so many times that I contemplated suicide, prayed that God would just take me, prayed that next needle I threw in my arm would like just take me out the game. And then I remember the house that I got caught in. A guy came home, and he walks in his house, and I've got like a safe and some other stuff by his door. And he was an older man, and he was small.
Yeah.
But I've always been a gentle giant.
Yeah.
I've never been like aggressive towards people. And he stops and he says, "Who are you, and why are you in my house?" And I broke down, dude. I started crying, not because I got caught.
Right.
I was upset because I knew what I was doing. I hated myself.
Yeah.
I wanted to die. You know what I mean? And it was almost a sheer relief. And I went out and I sat on his front porch with him, and he actually came out and put his hand on my shoulder, and he's like, "You're better than this." He was like, "Whatever you're going through," he's like, "it could be better on the other end." So that always stuck with me too. That's just one of those weird like God stories. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Amelia's born, and you've got this. You have this new baby girl,
right?
And I want to touch real quick. I heard it was a speech by Dana White, UFC Dana White, and he talks about how your life isn't your legacy, your family is your legacy, your kids are your legacy. And I think coming from a family where your dad instilled those morals, those types of beliefs, he talks about where how you raise your kids and what kind of parent you are, and if your kids are accepting of you, that leaves your legacy.
Right.
And I think you're doing just that. I think not only are you doing just that, but you're showing and encouraging others. I mean, just the dad from Akron,
right.
That's a huge statement in itself.
Yeah.
And you've always got your little girl by your side.
Right.
And there's so many fathers out there that aren't present. So it's just another one of those little like things that you're doing that I picked up on very quickly. So tell me about your relationship with Amelia.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know, there was something that clicked whenever she was born. Like the first time I held her, even though I was like out of my mind and this and that, there's something about like that special bond.
Yeah.
Like especially with a girl. And I always tell people like God gave me a girl to like inspire me to like, be a better person. Because if I had a boy, I'd be like, yeah, go piss on the wall. Like it'd have been like my homie versus like, like I wouldn't have been a protector, like to the extent as I am. So like the bond with her, it's like even like in addiction, it was like, like we had this special bond, and like I think that's what made me feel so guilty. It's like you deserve better, and like I deserve, to be a better person, and I have responsibility. So like going to treatment, getting sober, coming home from treatment, 30 days, like 30, 40 days sober, like the tables turn, I'll become like full-time dad. So I have my daughter 6 days a week, like because I'm a responsible person now, like people see, because I'm like, everyone's like, yeah, how long are you going to stay sober this time? 30 days, 60 days, like talking shit. And I'm like, I don't know. We'll see, because I don't want to, I had sold people so many dreams.
That's all, yeah.
Yeah. I'd sold people so many dreams of like, I would tell them this beautiful vision or plan of like what I plan to do, and I would fail.
Yeah.
And then it's like people were setting expectations, So I just said, I was like, I don't know, I guess, we'll see. We'll see, and I use that as like motivation and fuel to like, so I had her every day, and I'm taking her to meetings. I'm taking her to church. I'm taking everywhere I went, I took her with me. And the first year we went to like every fireworks and like Rubber Ducks baseball game and carnival within like 50 miles. That's our thing, And we start like hanging out with I find like newer dads in recovery, 30, 60, whatever, however sober, and they have a little kid. So we're like ganging up, and like it's like this little like dad gang, right? And we're going places and like spending time with our kids and building those relationships and being present dads. And that was like the foundation of like being a dad. So like, and I feel like now it's like I've set that foundation, and like the early recovery was like so amazing with like the time with my daughter. It's like now it's like I had set like this like this crazy expectation, like these expectations of like being a great dad that I have to like now live up to, or like I have to, and it's hard because I wasn't running a business or anything then, so it's like all that time, it's like, and I still get to spend time with her, but it's like not as much. I wish I could just spend time with her all day, every day, and like still have some way, have like a source of income, I'm like, that would be the goal long term, but it's like, it's like the moments, I don't want to miss these moments, like when I got sober, I got to watch her take her first steps, and I was like, I don't know, it was like the first month I was sober, I think, first month I was home, and, like to watch her talk and watch her gain this personality, and like become this little human being, it's a beautiful thing. So like that relationship is like, I would give away everything in the world.
Well,
it's like, to like, but it's like, it's like, yeah. So it's like, I just like try to recognize like where I fall short, and like recognize that, and then like how can I do better, so it's like, but like our relationship today is great. Like we hang out every time we see each other.
I always see the post.
It's like, it's like we have the most fun. Like I wouldn't trade it for the world. And now she's like getting into skateboarding, it's like that's what I was, a skateboarder. So it's like she's a natural. Like we went to the skate park like a month ago.
I was gonna say, you guys were just at the
and she just gets on the skateboard and she's pushing and she's riding and she like hits the ramp and like bends her knee. No.
It's like or maybe she was going up a ramp.
Okay. So like that picture that you're talking about is like her on top of the quarter pipe. It was like a picture to like trick me. Like Christy was there. Okay. Christy took her like to the skate park, because I was out of town, and she took her. And they're like, yeah, let's hear Dad.
I was like, she's like gangster.
Yeah, it's like, but she's like a natural, She's never rode a skateboard, and she's just on cruising through the park. And I'm like, wow, like how do you know how to do these? And she's like, I just know. And I'm like, whoa, it's like that was like the first thing is like, wow, like you really do like your kids encounter like your stuff, it's nuts. So But I'd say, you know, like the relationship is like, I just have that mindset. It's like, no matter how great things are, like no matter how great my recovery is today, or like my relationship with God, or like my relationship with Christy, or like anybody, it's like there's always room for improvement.
Yeah.
And I guess just like early in sobriety, I just learned to never be like content with like what it is. And that's like a good thing and a bad thing, you know? It's like the greatest thing, like when the documentary came out, or like great milestones of like achievements, you know, success. It's like, cool, what's next, you know?
Well, and that's the whole point of the podcast was, and most of the guys that I've had on here are guys that have come from felony backgrounds,
Yeah.
and they're just doing amazing things. And you've, like you just said, you've had the motivation, you've had the drive, you've had the determination that
Yeah.
you're going to make something happen.
Yeah.
You weren't going to fail this time. It's we build monsters. Like that's
Yeah.
the whole, you know what I mean? That's the whole preface of that whole hashtag phrase, whatever. But so you decided to start a clothing store then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's one of the main that's one of the main things that I love about you, because you didn't just go work a 9 to 5 to take care of your family. You
Right.
didn't just go say, I'm going to hop in the rat race and work 40 hours a week. And
Right.
you were like, no, I'm going to do something bigger.
Yeah.
And you've not only started a clothing company, but you started a whole movement throughout the community.
Right.
You got your 501(c), which is a nonprofit for those that don't know, for the Jaffa House. Like
Yeah.
you're just doing amazing things. So tell me, what was starting off with like the clothing store?
Yeah.
How did that all start? How did it all come about?
Yeah. So like, you know, like the first 2.5 years in sobriety, that was like 2.5 years in sobriety. And then like this vision came about. So it's like I've worked every job possible. You know, I've done janitor, I've done cook, you know, everything. And leading up to this, I've done welding, and then like the leading up to like opening the store was excavation. So like the first 2.5 years, that's mainly what I did was like excavation. So I did that, and like just growing with God and like in recovery and stuff like that, I knew like my story and just like how I was growing and like how God was going to use me was greater than just to, you know, work a normal job.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with, like, some days I wish I worked a normal job, you know, because it's like so much stress running a business and stuff. It's like I wish I could just go punch a clock, do my hours, and then that's it. And like then I don't have to worry about it.
Well, but I mean, like you said, you left it in God's hands.
Yeah.
And I have to be honest, dude, you're an inspiration around the community.
I appreciate it.
So he had bigger plans for you.
Yeah. So like 2.5 years, you know, I'm like doing the excavation, and I just start praying, like, God, like I know that you have a greater purpose, you know, like for me. And I always want, you know, I've always had the thing for clothing, you know. So I was like, it was like God gave me the vision of just a Dad from Akron. So I was like to create positive, inspiring clothing, you know. It's like mental health, merchandise, addiction recovery merchandise, community merchandise, just or faith-based, you know, stuff that like empowers people.
Yeah.
Stuff that is the complete opposite of the old brand, right? So it's like to make positive, uplifting clothing and build community instead of destroy it, you know, and like and give back instead of take. So like I sat down with one of my good friends, Noelle Beck. She had raised me as a kid, like a mentor, you know, at the place next door, First Glance, Urban Youth Community Center. And she was a positive role model, like genius, you know, like she's like an evangelist, like super powerhouse for God, and like mentors and loves kids in the neighborhood, and like just loves them when they can't love themselves, you know. And that's what she did for me. So when I got sober, I went back and volunteered, and I told her like, yeah, this is my business idea, you know. And she's like, well, let's meet up, you know, and like just start putting the foundation of it together, like your vision, this and that. And we did that for like 6 months, and I had like tons of notebooks, you know. And then like I just kept praying, and in March 2020, you know, God gave me, you know, he's like, yeah, you know, he's like, launch a business. So I launch it, and 2 weeks later, like, you know, I launch it, everything's going great. It's just a website, everything, it's taken off. And 2 weeks later, it's like COVID, you know, and it's like the whole world shuts down. And I'm like, God, like you gave me this, you told me, you know, like, and gave me the, like, you know, the direction to like do this. And I'm like, how's this going to succeed? And I just kept praying. I just kept that mustard seed of faith, you know, and like, and just kept praying, and like the unthinkable happens, right? So it's like COVID happens, world shuts down, news hits me up for something I did. I like made this first like dad award for one of my buddies I haven't seen. I didn't see him. We were best friends in middle school, didn't see him for like 10, 15 years. See him on social media. His kid was like 6 or 7, battling with like terminal cancer. And I'm like, that's inspiring. Like, that's the type of dad I want to be, you know, like that. Like, and so I reach out to his family and I'm like, hey, like, I want to surprise him, you know, like with this, like, we haven't seen each other in 10 years. I want to surprise him with this dad award. News picks that up, puts it out, company takes off. Social media, you know, like internet sales, that's all it was. And start making all this money from the sales and stuff. And I'm like, all right, like, how do I give back to the community when everything's shut down? Right. So I pray about it. And then I end up linking with First Glance, like next door. And we did a whole bunch of like groceries, you know, so we're buying groceries, buying toilet paper. I had like the secret plug on toilet paper, you know, so I'm like going and buying it. And like this lady asked, like when I'm buying it one day, I'm like buying like 50 packs of paper. And she's like, oh, you're one of those people. And I'm like, what do you mean one of those people? And she's like, you're buying all this to hoard it. I'm like, no, actually, I'm giving it away. And I'm like, you want one? Like, as I'm at the cash register, and she's like, you know, because like that's the thing is like when you have tattoos, people see and they judge you. So she's like, and like that's the reason I'm like, okay, like that's cool because I want people that don't know me to like look at me and judge me. And then if they find out like what I do later, that's cool because I want it to like change their perspective, you know?
Yeah.
And she'll be like,
I love that you said that, like the guys with the tattoos, but it's in general because it's just that and now I mean it's 2023 at this point. Everybody has tattoos.
Yeah.
But there's still that stigma.
Yeah.
Like I walk around and people think I'm like just this angry, like I don't know, like mean, aggressive, and I'm like I'll come and give you a hug and a heart.
Right,
you know what I mean? Like I'm a huge baby. But yeah, it's so you're buying the toilet paper, you're handing it all out.
Yeah, and it's like that's how it's like that was like the first give back thing that I did was like, you know, so it's like because I wanted to create the clothing like apparel with purpose, you know, so it's not just super cool clothing, but like it has a purpose, you know, so like to empower the person wearing it, to empower a random stranger that might see it walking down the street, but also it gives back, you know.
Well, and it also gives it's talking points. It's conversation piece. It's like you know what I mean? You're wearing one of the shirts that have something to do with mental health. It's a segue into having a conversation.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like, and like, that was very clear from like my vision from the beginning. It's like just a dad from Akron, right? So it's like, it doesn't have to, it's not about being a dad, right? You know, it's like, it is in a sense, you know, but like, you don't have to be a dad to support, you know, like you're supporting a dad that's doing stuff in the community. And like that was like a crazy like curve at the beginning was people were like, well, I'm not a dad, or like I'm not from Akron and this and that. I'm like, you know, people just it was so small and premature. People couldn't see like the growth, you know, of like what the purpose of it was. And then like the news thing happened and the websites start going. So then we're delivering care packages to elderly, single parents, anyone who needed stuff. And I'm talking like businesses were hitting us up like, hey, like no one's coming in because it's COVID. Like we have 50 loaves of bread. It's all like brand new, like good to go. Like you guys want it? And we're like, hell yeah, you know, and like different stuff like that. And we're just bolting like bags and bags of care packages and just dropping off on people's porch, you know. And that was like God led us to do that because he made a way. So fast forward 2021, business had just snowballed from there, you know, 2020, and it started like picking up and like gaining traction. And I'm like delivering orders every day after the excavation. Me and my daughter just getting in the car. We're delivering all the online orders and just meeting people because I wanted to hear their testimony. I want to hear like, oh, like how do you relate? Like what drove you to like buying the clothes? You know, like so they tell me their story, like how their son's battling addiction, or like how they're in recovery, you know, or just you know, I felt led to support. And so I'm like driving crazy, you know, I'm running real thin, working all day and then driving orders. And I'm like, God, like I need a storefront. Like if you see it fit, like make a way. And I drove up and down Kenmore Boulevard every day. And it's crazy because like I was homeless on the street, you know, like I had broken into cars on the street. I had, you know, did drugs on the street, slept on the street. And then like now I'm looking for a business on the street, you know, and it's insane. So I'm driving up and down every day and I start to lose hope, you know, like 2-3 months go out. I'm like, man, there's no way. Like, and I just felt led. It was like, God's like, you belong in Kenmore. And I started telling people like, yeah, I'm going to open a store in Kenmore. And they're like, why the hell would you do that? They're like, there's no way it'll ever succeed. Like, do you see the neighborhood? And I'm like, I don't know. This is what I'm led to do. You know, this is what I'm supposed to do.
I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I'm doing it.
So one day I pull up with my buddy, my homie Steve, and we're sitting here at this light, and there's like a sign in this window, like before rent, for sale sign. And I'm like, oh, that's the spot. And he's like, I don't know, man. And I'm like, put the number in my phone, and it's saved in my phone already as new home. And my buddy's like, that's God. That's God telling you that's where you need to be. He's like, no.
You were looking at the apartment upstairs?
No, I was looking at the storefront.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, and I'm like, dude, that's crazy. You know, he's like, no matter what hoops you have to jump through, like, make sure you get that spot. So I call a landlord, meet up with him. And this place was abandoned. It was all boarded up, you know. So it was abandoned for 10 years. I like call him. I'm like, yeah, I want the storefront. And he's like, okay. He's like, you don't know what it looks like. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm like, I know this is where I'm supposed to be, right? So I meet him here, walk in, filled with trash to the ceiling, no electric, burn up couches, just disgusting, you know. And as soon as I walk in the door, I've seen the vision. I'm like, yep, this is it. I want it. I'm like, what do you want for it? He's like, you can't even see anything. He's like, it's all barricaded with trash. I'm like, I just know this is where I'm supposed to be. And he's like, all right, well, let's do this. You know, he sells me on the apartment upstairs. Got this apartment upstairs, blah blah blah. I'm like, dude, if it looks anything like this, like, I have a daughter. Like, we can't live in something like this.
Right.
He's like, fully remodeled, super dope. You know, so he's like, moving that, I'll get you together with the store. So I move in up there, and that's where like the real test of faith comes in, you know. So it's like I move up there, and I think like, you know, everything's gonna be smooth and sailing, and landlord's like, yeah, like after you settle in, I'll write a contract, a lease for the store, and I'm like, all right, sweet, you know. Months go by, I'm like, bro, what is going on with this store, you know? And he's like, you know what? I'll call you in 3 days. I'll have the lease. Calls me the next day, and I'm like super psyched, you know. I'm like, oh, that was quick, man. He's like, nah, I got bad news. I'm like, what? You know, he's like, the realtor like put the building under contract. He's like, someone's gonna be buying the building. And I'm like, dude, you know, I'm like, so I'm like, what, did you move me in up here to like get a few dollars? You
Right.
know, that's like my perspective. He's like, and then he says, Kenny, do you pray? I said, yeah, I pray. He's like, pray about it. If this is where you're supposed to be, everything will work out. And then I'm like, oh man, I'm so sick. I'm fighting tooth and nail.
Man.
I'm going to work every day. You know, I'm coming down at 5 in the morning to go to excavate. And then I'm coming back on lunch, and there's people here like laying out blueprints of what they're going to do to the building, and I'm like, there's no way. And I'm telling people in the community, and they're like, hey, we're going to pray for you. Like, we're going to pray, like that's where you get this spot. And like the whole church is praying, and people in the community are reaching out praying. And the landlord hits me up like on the 10th day, and he's like, yeah, man, it's not looking good. And I'm just like, I believe, man, like this is where I'm supposed to be. And I just kept praying. Day 14, he calls, and he's like, Kenny, I hope all is well. He's like, make your own lease. He's like, the financing fell through. The financing fell through for them to
No
buy
kidding.
the building. And I'm like, that's all I needed was like that little mustard
Yeah.
seed, right? And I just held on to that and just kept praying and had faith. So it was off and running, you know. And I had this great vision of like, I'm gonna turn this place around. I'm gonna flip the whole place in a month and open the store, right? And God's like, nope, be patient, you know. And it was like like we had to get all new electrical, like breaker box was gone, like everything, you know, it's like probably infested with rats and crazy. So we get that, and so it was like, you know, the process of like truly appreciating and like making this place what it should be. And so like I start going to like try to find different stores in the neighborhood of like Akron or even Ohio that are like relatively like what I want to do, similar, you know, there's nothing around. So I did this interview with like a marketing company or something, and they like interviewed about just a Dad from Akron, right? And they're like, yeah, like you should check out this guy. Like we interviewed him like last month, and he's in New York. And I'm like, read it. I'm like, wow, like this dude's doing like pretty much the same thing I want to do, you know? So I hit up, tell Christy and my buddy Sebastian, you know, uh, hey, we're going to New York. You know, we just road trip it up there.
So it was it's a similar project in New York to what you're doing here.
Yeah, so it's called
Okay.
Bronx Native. So it's like the
Okay.
same thing. It's like it's a clothing brand in the Bronx.
Okay.
And the dude, Amari, he's super cool. He just creates clothes, and it's just all Bronx empowerment clothing, you
Cool.
know? And he just does community events. He does like, you know, same thing I do. And we went up there, and the store is like off the chain. You know, it's no bigger than this area here. And it's just covered in graffiti and like super dope stuff, you know, like people come in and sign the walls and like
Yeah.
all different street signs and stuff. I'm like, bro, this is dope. This is how I want to do my store. I want to make my store empower like community, right? So then I come back. We, you know, we for the first like 2 months of like the renovations in here, we just ran an extension cord from upstairs and plugged in spotlights because we didn't have electric, you know?
Yeah.
And painted all the walls. And then I start hitting up different artists in the community, you know, like, yo, like, oh, you want to do a mural? And they're like, I'd love to do that, you know? I'm like, sweet. So they come in, and I just get every mural in here is a different artist. You know, that's how I want to be. Like the store is built by the community. Cause like when we started doing this, people were just randomly showing up like, hey, I got tools, or show up with random sheets of drywall. Like, hey, like I know we don't know each other, but I just felt led. Like God sent me here to help. And I'm like,
No, I was watching a bunch of your videos on YouTube, and there's a bunch of videos of like putting stuff together.
yeah, yeah,
And your dad award was on there and stuff like that.
yeah,
But it's wild. Like it's I don't know, man. You know you're doing a good thing when the community shows its support.
yeah,
You
for
know?
sure, yeah.
So you come back, you put the store together. Tell me about like how did that snowball at that point? Was because COVID was still going on, right?
Yeah, so like a little bit, but then like that's like when the wave of like COVID, you know, it's like everyone's like COVID's not real, or like, you know, some people wear masks and this and that. I never got COVID. So to me, like, you know, but like everyone I know, like all my family and everyone else did. And so like, yeah, you know, it's just like if you want to come hang out, you know.
Well, and the last time we talked, so it's also kind of just a hangout spot too.
Yeah,
You've got like the little baby kids that were
Yeah,
around
yeah.
the neighborhood that come down here, and the little like the few times that I've been in here hanging out with you, it's just random people. They don't even. It's not even like hey, I'm coming in to get a T-shirt. They're just popping in to say hi and hang out.
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
It's the community. It's the AA community. It's no, it's a truly amazing thing what you're doing here. So I do want to talk about let's talk about the movement real quick.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's been out for a minute.
Yeah.
What inspired you to do that? Like what was the whole purpose behind the movie?
Like the documentary? Yeah. So crazy. Before the store opened, random video dude hit me up on Facebook, right? And he's like, hey, I have my own equipment. Oh, like I see, you know, like you're doing all these things. Like I want to shoot like a quick 2-minute video for you for free. And I'm like, okay, sweet, right? So he comes, we start filming one day, and then he's like, yeah, well, I got to come back tomorrow and get some more stuff, you know? And we're like, all right, cool. And then he just came every day for 2 years and just filmed every day.
Clips.
Yeah. Like, no, like, so we start filming all this stuff. We just have all this footage, right? So after 2 years, he's like, bro, we got 600 gigs of footage. Like, what are we supposed to do with this? I'm like, bro, I don't know. You're the video dude, you know? Like, he's filming everything, like building the store, the events, printing clothes. He just becomes a homie, you know?
Yeah.
He just comes every day and hangs out. In video, and it become family, you know? So it's like, you know, then after like that, or like, yeah, he's like, we have all this stuff. Like, what do we do with it? I'm like, I don't know. Like, let's make a movie, you know? And he's like, yeah, that could be cool. We can make like a little documentary. So we just got like the missing pieces that we needed to make it a documentary.
That's so cool.
And I told him like from the beginning, though, I'm like, I don't want this film to be about me. I don't want it to be about Kenny Lambert, you know, like I want it to be about just a dad from Akron. So people understand greater, like just a dad from Akron isn't Kenny Lambert, you know, like that. It's a business, and it's the community.
Yeah.
Like just a dad from Akron is what happens when everyone comes together and they want to make a positive change. They want to support a local business, and they want to just, you know, make the community a better place for the people here.
Well, and so let's segue into that, because James Anderson just did his
Yeah.
You guys raised what? It was 30,000.
It was 20. Yeah, 20,000 total.
20,000 for Jadfa House. So for nobody that's kind of up to date with what's going on over here, explain what Jadfa House is.
Yeah, so like what the Jadfa House is, like the store has become like this huge safe place, right? So like meetings, we started doing meetings here, and then like
you have like pop-up lemonade stands from the neighborhood.
Yeah. So
I was in here the one day and some guy came in and he was like, I'm here for the lemonade. And you're like, oh man. I'm
Yeah. So it's like that's the thing, is like with the store, it's not just a clothing store. So it's like a communal spot, right? So like anyone that has like a business or whatever, I want to give people opportunity. You know, it's like that's why I have this place. God gave me this place to give people opportunity, and like to not just to be selfish and use it for myself.
Yeah.
So people do different pop-ups here and stuff. So like we started the AA mental health, like sober support mental health meeting on Fridays, and it grew rapid, you know, so it's like 60, 70 people. And like it used to be just in the store, and then we outgrew the store.
Yeah.
And in the summertime, we'll do it outside. So the Jadfa House came along, meetings going, like we're running out of space, you know, and we're praying like, God, like how can we continue to do these meetings and we can't facilitate them here?
Yeah.
And after the documentary, someone reached out and they say, hey, I have this building, I want to give it to you. And I'm like, well, I already have a building. Like, I don't need it. Thanks. You know, like, and he's like, no, like you have to take this building pretty much. Like I feel led to make and I'm like, I don't even know what I could use it for, you know? And then that was like around that same time, like in December, that's when the meeting started growing. So it was like October to December. And it's like God just answered that prayer, like, whoa, like, and my brain sometimes I'm like so busy I can't fathom like this is the opportunity right in front of me. Like here's this building, use it for like for the meetings and stuff. So that's what it ended up growing into. We prayed about it, ended up getting the building, put in the nonprofit name, started the whole nonprofit thing for that over there.
So what's the building going to be used for?
Yeah, so it's going to be used for meetings,
Okay.
so it's going to be every day of the week is the goal, and then all like meetings throughout the day. So it's going to be like a hub, for recovery or faith. You can go in, attend a meeting, you can go in and host a meeting. There's going to be all different resources for sober living, felony friendly jobs, resources for like anything that pretty much anyone in recovery or not can use to prolong it, and be a better better their life. So yeah, and then like Christy, so she's the one that she's taking over on the Dad House type stuff, as far as like the marketing, just really everything behind it. I'm just like the face, like just a Dad from Akron. I get the word out and let people know like, hey, this is what it is, and she's the back.
They've got. Has anybody ever told you look like Jacoby Shaddix?
I don't know who's that.
Papa Roach.
Oh no.
Oh well, they got you got the celebrity face, so there you go.
So it's like that. So like like she's the brains behind all of it, and like that's cool because then it's like I have the store and I have like a million things going on here, and she still helps here too. So it's like anything with like the Dad House is like her whole gig, like she's the brain. She knows about nonprofit
behind
stuff.
every great man. There's a great woman.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like that's the thing is like it's like I had never had a relationship like that ever because it's like all my relationships were toxic, people just like me. And then I get sober and it's like I find a woman that loves God, like a woman that wants to do community work, like side by side, like in the trenches of like passing out Christmas presents at 10 degrees.
Well, it's the same that goes with me and my wife. And it's having a wife having a partner that's willing to build with you instead of kind of be stagnant on the one side. That can make or break, and that can build you, or it can tear down a kingdom for all intents and purposes. No, I owe a ton of my success to my wife.
For sure. Same.
So when is Dad House set to be complete?
So that's like this, like over there, we're aiming for spring of 2024. So like in 2024. But it's like the whole process of just like the store, completely abandoned over there for like 8 years, filled with trash, completely. It was all gutted, no electrical. So we're doing all new renovations. So we're on that, on the hiatus of, like our goal was to like open it in the fall. Like when we first got it, we're like, oh yeah, this would be easy. This would be quick, do all this and that. And it's like, nope. So like we got like new windows, we got new electrical. We're on the process of like getting it all done. So we're hoping for spring.
Right on. So and just for anybody that's interested, if you are interested in hitting the Dad House, the way that's going to work is they're going to have sign up logins or sign up sheets, correct?
It'll be like a website.
Set appointments, set your meetings up there. I don't know if you're doing it online, but
it'll all like as we like it unfolds and more information as it unfolds.
Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, man. I think it's cool. It's cool.
I'm going to talk for a second because I like to hear myself talk and I like to give guys praise that deserve praise. I think what you're doing, man, is one of a kind. I think you are probably one of the most genuine guys I've ever met in my life.
I appreciate it, man.
I love watching everything from the Dad House to just from the shop to just everything. The James Anderson Ultra, and I've just recently like met you, like it's only been 2 months that you and I have been
it's like forth.
But and I say this in every one of my podcasts. At this point in my life, if you're stagnant, if you're not growing, I just can't be around you. I love you. I'll dab you in the street. I'll give you a hug at the gas station. You're still my dude. I don't want to grow along stagnant people because or walk along stagnant people. And to see somebody like you in the community, man, you have been a complete inspiration since I caught wind of you. I remember her and I were walking through, it was one of the events downtown. And you were in a booth off to the side. And I asked her, I said, have you ever heard of that guy? And she goes, yeah, that's just the Dad from Akron. And she started telling me about it. Well, that was about a year before I had actually like decided to do the podcast.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
started looking into things. And I very clearly remember it was when I first started looking for guests, she told me, she said, you need to reach out to Kenny. She said, get Kenny on the show. He would be a great guest.
Yeah.
And after I started reading about you, looking into you, I was like, this guy is an absolute monster. Like I love everything that you're doing. You're just doing amazing things. So
I appreciate
keep doing what you're doing. I'm super glad that we got to become friends.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I would love to have you back on, and we'll maybe get a couple other guys.
Yeah.
I want to start doing like little like circle and just have the guys shoot the shit. But I really wanted your story out there because if nothing else, I want to promote even further what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate it greatly.
So with that being said, we're gonna wrap it. Guys, Kenny Lambert, he's under the plug on the website. So if you want to go check him out, or you can check him out at Just a Dad from Akron. It's what? Just a Dad from Akron.
Just a Dad from Akron.com, Instagram, Just a Dad from Akron. I'm gonna start getting more like on the YouTube videos. I've been like lazy, you know.
Yeah.
So
Jadfa House also has a website, correct?
Yeah, the jadfahouse.org, and then on Facebook, the Jadfa House. So like the Jadfa is Just a Dad from Akron abbreviated.
Okay.
Jadfa House, yeah.
So I encourage all of you to go check them out, guys. I appreciate all of you checking out the season premiere the premiere for season 2. I am so thankful you came on.
I appreciate it, man. I'm thankful for you.
Awesome. I want to promote you even more. You've done an amazing job of promoting yourself, but anything I can do, even if it reaches one other person.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Same.
So, all right, guys. Yeah. We love you. We'll catch you on the flip side.
Shut the fuck up!